Hey people, it is the Sci-Fi show, and today I've watched a video that's so hilariously wrong. It's about the Empire of Man from Warhammer 40k, or the Imperium of Man, against the Federation. And I know it sounds like I hate the Federation or I hate Star Trek. I don't. It's just Star Trek is not a very powerful universe, and it's mainly because of speed. But and even if firepower was equalized, the Federation would still lose. But let's go over what this man has to say.
You all have run these simulations, you've run these numbers, you know war so well. But again, you operate on the assumption that Starfleet would go into a total war mentality against you.
It would have to. I mean, the Imperium of Man is not known for being tolerant towards human civilizations that aren't it. But so I want to know what kind of scenario you want for this. Yeah, he's not going to see this video, but let's say the Imperium of Man and the Federation's galaxies are teleported right next to each other, right? The Federation wouldn't even be able to reach the Imperium of Man if they're like side by side along the galactic plane. They it just the Federation wouldn't be able to even reach the Imperium. Now the Imperium would be able to reach the Federation because we know that the Imperium of Man ships can indeed make warp jumps outside the Astronomicon's light. However, these warp jumps are very slow, and it would be very difficult. It would probably take at least like decades. So I would say that the Imperium of Man, it would be able to reach the Federation if you take out every other enemy that the Imperium of Man have. Then the Imperium would be able to send a force to fight the Federation. But I mean, realistically speaking, the Imperium of Man, if it's just both galaxies, wouldn't even have the resources to spare. Wouldn't have the resources to spare at all. But if you take the Imperium of Man just by itself without its enemies, God, do you understand how ridiculous that would be? You have pretty much almost every ship would be able to just straight up kill a life on a planet just by ramming it, to say nothing of orbital bombardment, to say nothing of exterminatus, which that alone seals the deal. And then in conjunction with just how much faster the Imperium of Man's FTL is, in conjunction with, I mean, there's no demons in the Star Trek universe, so I would say that it would probably be very smooth sailing for the Imperium of Man. So they would probably make very good time when it comes to getting towards the Federation's space. Again, the Federation just wouldn't be able to reach the Imperium of Man. Period. But let's see what his argument is. It's
And they
very
wouldn't even
hilarious.
have to. Starfleet would take down the Imperium of Man so quickly that the Imperium would think that the Emperor had come back and was mad at them. I mean,
This statement is objectively false, just off the rip, from the fact that the Federation's warships wouldn't even be able to cross the Imperium of Man without, dying of old age.
yeah, sure, you've got the big guns, you've got the big ships, you've got all those soldiers.
They do. They do.
But Starfleet would only need to send one ship. Miranda class would do the trick. You have to remember is that the Imperium of Man from Warhammer 40k is a culturally dead entity.
We're not even going to talk about the fact he doesn't address how the Miranda class starship would even get to the Imperium of Man in the first place. But let's continue. He says the Imperium of Man is culturally dead. I would disagree. This is a popular myth that the Imperium of Man doesn't innovate. That's just wrong off the rip. We have Meki from Warhammer 40k Adventures, Galaxy of Adventures, where he's innovating, he's creating machines. Now, it's true he was exiled from the Mechanicus for it, but I mean, the fact is they can create new things. We see Belisarius Call, who the Mechanicus is split on because he does innovate. He's created Hellblasters. He's created Primaris Marines. He's created whatever they're called, tanks. I don't really. I just don't care at this point.
They don't innovate anymore. They don't even understand their own technology. So while the Miranda class was just Picard maneuvering all over the place, making the Imperium ships waste their ammo.
This is a fair point. I'll give him this. The Imperium of Man hasn't really encountered any races that can go into FTL at will. Oh, wait, the Necrons can. But the Imperium of Man doesn't do well against the Necrons, so that's kind of a moot point. But What I'd like to draw your attention to are lances. Lances are essentially those massive guns on top of most Imperial warships. They are not on the cruisers for some weird reason. They're on the bottom of the Dauntless light cruiser for some weird reason. But the point that I'm making is that lances are a weapon that propagate at the speed of light. So, assuming that the starship is near enough for lances to hit it, again, those lances are going to be hitting it pretty much almost instantaneously, and they're going to be doing significant damage. If they're able to injure ships in the Imperium of Man, which can handle gigatons of firepower, I would expect them to definitely be able to injure a Federation starship.
A single engineering team would beam aboard an Imperium ship, scan their.
He does realize that ships in the Imperium of Man have transporters of their own. Quite literally, almost. Now, okay, if you want to go by the Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2 game, every warship in the Imperium of Man has these beaming devices, teleporters, that are used for boarding actions. However, Geller or shields, not Geller fields, but shields can block teleporters. So if they can block teleporters in Warhammer 40k, I see no reason to believe that they wouldn't block teleporters from the Star Trek universe. And can you just imagine how awful it would be for a group of space marines to board a Federation warship? Can you? I can't.
Computer systems, develop a virus, and deploy it.
He makes a statement that the Federation would be able to use viruses against the Imperium of Man, against the Imperium of Man's warships. He assumes that the Federation has magical viruses that are stronger than the Imperiums, or what the Imperium is used to, because the Imperium is used to a particularly nasty kind of computer virus called scrap code. It's a type of computer virus that is just so much more powerful than anything I've seen in the Federation. I wouldn't put it past scrap code to be able to hack the Star Trek warships. Now, the Imperium of Man does not use these technological viruses of their own. They are exposed to them mainly by chaos. But it's quite ridiculous to state that the Imperium of Man has no experience with viruses, because in reality, the Imperium of Man has experience with viruses that are worse than anything that the Federation could create reasonably.
By the time the technomancers realized that praying to the machine spirits just wasn't working anymore.
Except praying to the machine spirit quite literally does work. That's the whole point of the AI, but rather it's, the spirit of the machine. The whole point is that these machine spirits, they are real in the Warhammer 40k universe, and praying to them does work. If you have an idiot tech priest who says, "No, I won't put the holy oils on that Titan or whatever," that vehicle becomes infected by chaos.
The battle's already over. And Starfleet could take the Space Marines on a tour. Eugenics. Still a bad idea.
No, it isn't. Not when you're creating superhumans that are, designed to conquer planets. God, I just want to. There is no fandom that is consistently overrepresentative of their own universe for some reason than the Star Trek fandom. And I mean, I'm a member of the Star Trek fandom, but I don't understand. This whole thing with, we can defeat any universe. No, please stop. You're just wrong. You wouldn't even be able to reach the Imperium of Man. And if it comes to a straight slugfest, even if you equalize the speeds, the Imperium of Man still wins just by sheer raw numerical superiority. You have worlds on the Imperium of Man that are dedicated entirely to cranking out warships. They're called Forge Worlds. You have in the Imperium of Man 1,000,000 planets going up against 350 member planets. Oh my god. I am so tired.